Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I'm your host, Piers, and tonight, or today, wherever you are in the world, I am joined by my special guest, former Ring of Honor television champion and Ring of Honor star, Silas Young, the last real man. But before we get into my interview with Silas, I just want to give a special shout out to some of our sponsors who make this show possible every single week. First off is Signal Studios, which is a recording studio based here in Sydney, Australia, by my good friend Rafi Tomasian. If you're a pro wrestler, you need an entrance theme, you need some music to walk to the ring with, Raf can hook you up. Hit him up on Signal Studios on Facebook. Even if you just need a place to record or you want some music to write your own stuff to, he'll be able to help you out. My next sponsor is Mayan Belts. Now, Mayan Belts are the best belt maker in the effing world. If you want a custom championship belt or a replica of your favorite championship belt, hit up my buddy Eddie and Ira Williams on Facebook, and they will take care of you like no one else. Now, my last but not least sponsor is ROH Designs. ROH Designs is a company based out in Georgia in the United States, and they are without a doubt the best company to get for you to find some custom tumblers, cups, keychains, hoodies, t-shirts, whatever it is. They'll be able to do it. They do a wrestling theme, but they also do any other theme that you'd like on those cups. So make sure you hit them up. Now, one other thing that I just want to touch out. We recently opened up our Pro Wrestling Tee store on Pro Wrestling Tees. So head over to Pro Wrestling Tees. You'll be able to find such shirts like the Shooting the Shit Uncensored shirt, the MWA logo shirt, the MWA anime shirt, and also the MWA 2020 wrestling shirt. So guys, head over there. Make sure you check it out. Tell us what you think, and make sure you help support us. So, guys, without further ado, I'm going to bring him in. Silas, thanks for joining me, man.
Of course, I'm happy to be here, but you need to remember, when you refer to me by my proper name. I am the last real man in pro wrestling, Silas Young. So get it right.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry. Please just forgive me. I do not know what I do. But Silas, how's things been going for you, man, with all the COVID stuff and everything that's been going on in the world lately? How have you been? How's your family been?
I think my life's been a lot like everybody else's. The whole COVID thing threw everybody for a loop. I spent quite a few months just sitting at home, watching a lot of Netflix, watching a lot of wrestling. At first, I looked at it as a little bit of a godsend, because it gave us all some time off to let our bodies heal, and I was excited about that. But then weeks turned into months, and then I started getting a little antsy to get back into the gym. I'm someone who is a little bit of a creature of habit. I enjoy going to the gym. It's something that a lot of people look at exercise as something that's only about, physical enhancements. But the truth of the matter is, working out, makes your brain release all these feel good chemicals, and it's really good for mental wellness too, So I always, recommend to people, if they're feeling a little down or whatever, working out really helps balance us out a little bit. So it's something that I was definitely missing. I'm in Wisconsin, obviously, in the Milwaukee area, and luckily my gym opened up a few weeks back at the end of May, so I've been back in there making up for lost time, doing 2-a-days, going in the morning, doing cardio on an empty stomach, and then going back home, eating a few meals, and coming back in the evening and working out. So the COVID thing's definitely been weird. It threw everybody's life for a loop. I haven't wrestled since February. That's really weird for me. I've been wrestling for 18 years. So to not be wrestling for all this time, it's been very weird,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you mentioned training and being that mental release as well. I completely understand, and we've only just had the gyms open back up here. I think it was the 13th of June, and man, since they have, I've been I've been in the gym same as you, man, 2 days, just trying to get that sort of rhythm back going, especially like to have that sort of mental release, but also that time which is just yours to sort of, be in the present moment and give yourself that time to push your body. But
Right.
prior to getting into wrestling, one of the things that I found, or one of the things that I read, was that you were actually suffered from a heroin addiction for a while there.
Yeah. I mean,
And sorry.
go ahead.
No,
No, go
and
ahead.
I just wanted to ask, like, you said you're from the Milwaukee area. You're from that area. Was heroin a massive issue in that area around that time, or is it something that you fell into yourself?
I mean, it's honestly, it's been something that's been a huge issue for the last 10, 20 years everywhere across the country, maybe even in other countries. I'm not real sure. I've been wrestling for 18 years at this point, so honestly, it feels like a completely different life then. But I grew up in an area where it was around. I got into it at a young age, didn't realize what I was doing, and then honestly, it was wrestling that saved me. I had a buddy in high school who became a wrestler right out of high school. I went and saw him in his first match, and that's where I decided, hey, this is what I want to do with my life. Got home that night, started cleaning up my life, started training, started working out, and then it's been nothing but forward and upward since then. So it's now at this point, 18 years later, it feels like a lifetime ago. It feels like I'm a completely different person. But yeah, I mean, I think it's also something that's taught me to appreciate the things that I have in life, because you go through, crappy times, and it makes you appreciate the stuff you have.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think that to be able to come from that and to see where you are now, 18 years later,
Mhm.
is, it speaks wonders for the sort of human being that you are, to be able to sort of go through that, where a lot of people think, heroin addiction, you're basically, that's what you're going to be labeled as. But to
Right.
be able to go through that and sort of come out on the other side of that is truly inspiring. And it just goes to show that anyone who's in that situation now can always clean themselves up and get out of that place where they're at.
Right. And I think, I think a lot of people, would be embarrassed to talk about it. And obviously it's not a high point in my life by any means. And in one way, I think that it's helped me appreciate things, but I feel like it's also something that makes me be able to help show people that you don't have to let yourself be pigeonholed into something. You don't have to be like, let some one experience totally dictate who you are for the rest of your life. We're all in control of ourselves and our own destinies. And granted, I had a lot of good people along the way that helped me out, family, friends, stuff like that. But it's up to us with what we do with our lives. So it's something that I'm not proud of. I'm glad it's been almost 2 decades since, but it's something that I'll always kind of hold on to a little bit, never let myself really forget. So you can realize where you were and where you are now, and realize that you got to always keep working hard, and keep moving forward. You can't always look back, and you can't let stuff define you.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. You need to be able to, let your past be your past, and your future be your future. And that's the thing. Your past can't define who you are to this day.
Correct.
But how did you find, once you broke into wrestling and you started training and you started, taking the physical bumps and the physicality of pro wrestling, was it something that you adapted to quite easily and quickly?
So the funny thing is, so I got 5 older brothers. There was like a batch of 3 were born within a few years, and then there was like about an 8, 9 year gap, and then there was the younger 3, and I'm the youngest out of 6. So me and my one brother, who's about 2 years older than me and him are real close. And I remember he brought me to my first wrestling training session. And my brother, he's a good dude, he's a good human, but he's a pretty crass type of guy. He's not one to beat around the bush, so to speak. So he took me, and I did it. And I did pretty good. Like, I was an athlete when I was a kid. I did like gymnastics and stuff for about 4 or 5 years. I played basketball, football, baseball, that crap. And I remember I got out afterwards, and I had taken the bumps and stuff like that you do at your first training session. And he was like, "How did it go?" And I remember like being a little dizzy, and like the ropes. For people who don't know, the ropes are basically steel cables with like holes around them. So after you do it for a long time, your body adapts to it. But when you're first doing it, you hit those ropes, you get bruises on your lats and on your hips from the top rope and the middle rope. So my body was real beat up, and he was like, "How did it go?" And I was like, I don't know, man. It was pretty rough. I don't know if I could do it. And he looks at me, he goes, "I don't know. What's your policy on cussing here? I don't know. I don't want to."
No, we're shooting the shit uncensored. You can say whatever the fuck you want, my friend.
All right, cool. So, I was like, "Oh, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if I can do it." And he goes, "Oh, quit being a fucking pussy. You've been talking about doing this forever." He's like, "Of course it's going to hurt you. It's the first time you're doing it, but you'll be able to get used to it." And I was like, "You know what? You're fucking right. Yeah, I am going to stick with it." So, my brother was, he was close with me, and maybe he's not the best at expressing his feelings, but I think that was his way of saying, "Hey man, I support you. You can do this, don't be a pussy about it. Get back out there." And it really helped me, and stuck with it since.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like a lot of people, they probably look at pro wrestling and go, "Oh, I can get in there and do that." Like they probably think, "Oh, yeah, it's easy. Anyone can get in there. I could go and train for a week, and WWE's going to pick me up like that, or Ring of Honor's going to pick me up like
Right.
that." But I think that a lot of people don't really understand how physical pro wrestling is, and taking the bumps and it's all very real. Like.
Right.
Yeah. How do you fall on the concrete or fall on the mat and not sort of feel, oh, okay, it's not landing on a mattress.
Right. And I think the thing is, I think the reason that misconception is because yes, it's an athletic thing, but we all it's 2020. We all know wrestling isn't real in the idea that guys are really fighting and they're really trying to beat each other. Wrestling is it's a form of theater. It's a form of storytelling. We're going out there, and instead of telling a story with our words, we're telling a story with our actions or our characters, So they think that since it's fake, so to speak, that it's easy and anybody can do it. But the fact of the matter is it's hitting each other hard in safe spaces. It beats up your body. You have to be an athlete to do it. And I also think you have to be a smart person to do it. To be good at it, you have to get how human psychology works, how people work, what excites people, what makes people mad, what makes people think you're great, what makes people think you're pieces of shit, So, it's definitely one of those things that people have the misconception and think like, oh, well, it's fake, so it must be easy, but you said it perfectly. It's not falling on a mattress,
That's the thing. Like, I've been a wrestling fan my whole life. And to me, whenever I've heard someone say that F word, it's like, man, take, for example, a movie. Like, it's pro wrestling is a live stunt show, right. Essentially. And that's the way I explain it to people. It's like, you don't sit there and go, "Man, that movie Robert De Niro did was fake as fuck last night." You know what I mean? Like you can't really say that. But I actually have someone blowing up in the comment section. Angel Medina, who is a former ECW original. He was the leader of the Baldies there. Right. He's a good friend of mine, and I'm going to bring this up. And he's a smart ass, so I'm sure you can appreciate it. But he's dropping stuff like, "I think wrestling is fake. I think anyone can do it. More like a pillow." One of the things Angel tries to do is he tries to pop me while I'm live on camera just to get a giggle out of me. So if you see me snicker, it's only because he's being a smart ass in the comments. So Angel, thanks for watching. You fucking
I'm going to thank Angel too, because I think I saw these popping up like along the bottom, and I was kind of laughing a little bit like, what the fuck is this all about? But I know some guys get real offended by the whole fake word, but I mean, I'm not like that. I mean, fuck, it's not real, it is, but it's one of those things too, where I always think it's funny for the people who think it's easy. I enjoy watching people come in their first time and try and do it. And it's, no matter what type of athlete you are, you could have been a former legitimate wrestler, a former football player, hockey player, whatever, bodybuilder, whatever, just a great athlete. And wrestling's different, even for myself, I start to think like, it's been like, 6 months since I wrestled, or 5-6 months, whatever it is. You can go to the gym and you can work out, but there's nothing that simulates ring cardio, but being in the ring and wrestling. So, I don't get offended by the fake thing. So when I hear that there's dudes in the business that do that, I think it's funny, like trying to work the boys. It's good shit. I enjoy it. So, so I appreciate Angel and like him already for never,
No, Angel's a great guy, and he's become a very good friend of mine over the last few months. But you know, when you were breaking into one of the things he just said, LOL, Silas, I appreciate you. I appreciate you like my humor. Much respect. So there you go. Two legends of pro wrestling. I'll definitely have to hook you guys up in the down the line here.
I think if anything, wrestling teaches you that you can't take yourself too seriously, and you got to learn to roll with the punches a little bit in life and everything in general, you know, and also learn that I think we live in a society nowadays where everybody thinks their opinion is right, and if you don't agree with my opinion, then you're dumb and you're an asshole. And everybody's got different opinions, man. Everybody comes from different walks of life and different life experiences, so we all have have different opinions and, more importantly, different perspectives, you know. So I think part of being a smart person is realizing that, hey, I'm going to learn a lot more from listening to someone else's perspective or ideas and trying to at least understand where they're coming from, opposed to being like, oh, you're a dumb fuck and you don't know what you're talking about, you know?
Yeah, and you know what? That's the thing that you hear a lot about, you know, and it's probably more in the older generations of wrestlers where, you know, kayfabe is still very much alive in their minds, and you know, oh, you say the F word. You know, one of the things to me, like, you know, we were talking before, I have the opportunity to speak to professional wrestlers from around the world each and every week. And one thing that really annoys me about wrestling fans, I'm a wrestling fan myself, and I don't claim to be anything but a wrestling fan. But one of the things that I sort of sit there is like when I see fans like trying to talk to wrestlers or hit them up on social media, referring to them as their real name and stuff like that. Because to me, it's like, motherfucker, you don't know like this person by that name. You know them by the ring name. And
Right,
so whenever I'm interacting with pro wrestlers, I always refer to them by their ring name. If they tell me to call them their shoot name, then I will. But it's out of respect. And that's, you know, the way that I've always been, you know, told about the business. And for me, that's where I've always sort of followed that sort of guideline.
Right. You know, the funny thing for me is like, and I think a lot of guys in wrestling would attest to this, we all usually refer to each other by our wrestling names, because, you know, that's usually what we know each other as. Maybe if it's someone you're close friends with, they might call you your real name or whatever. But I'm more used to, especially over the last 18 years. And when you become in wrestling, it's very, especially if you're really into it and you're really trying to make a living at it and you really make it your life, you have to make it your life. So you're very entrenched in the wrestling culture and the wrestling lifestyle. And, you know, you're used to, I'm more used to being referred to as Silas than I am being referred to as my real name. So sometimes, like when I go back home and I hang out with friends, and people call me my real name, and sometimes like, oh, I'm not used to that, you know. So it's funny. I'm more used to being called Silas than anything else, you know.
Yeah, and you know what? Getting into that, I wanted to ask you about you know, the Silas Young character, but a few years ago, you were claiming to be the nephew of Stan Hansen. Can you like, was that a misconception?
So, no, I was never claiming to be the nephew of Stan Hansen. So I think what happened was I'd wrestled some indie show pretty early in my career, like maybe 2006. I don't know. Could have been earlier, could have been after that. I don't know. But I wrestled some dude, and that dude was claiming to be the nephew of Stan Hansen, right? But he was kind of like a no-name guy, and whoever wrote the story or whatever claimed that I was the nephew of it, right? And I was like, well, fuck, man, Stan Hansen, that ain't a bad dude to be the nephew of. So like, I never really like didn't I didn't bring it up and say like, hey, this isn't me. But when people would bring it up, I'd laugh about it and I'd say like, yeah, I think that was a mix up or whatever. But yeah, that was definitely something that went around. And I think it even got brought up, like maybe JR did like a podcast or whatever thing like a few years back with Stan Hansen, and someone had asked that, and he's like, oh, no, I don't even know who this fucking guy is. You know, like I never met Stan Hansen. Why would Stan Hansen know who the fuck I am? You know, but yeah, that was, I should look into it, but yeah, it was some other guy that was claiming to be the nephew of Stan Hansen, and somehow in the story it got mixed around that I was a nephew. But I mean, not a bad comparison, right?
My apologies. My apologies.
No, it's a funny story because it's come up before. So
yeah, what, you know, one of the things that I have to say, and your character of Silas Young, the last real man, I, for me personally, I'm not sure if any other wrestling fans has ever said this to you, but I get the same feeling with your characters, very similar to like a Harley Race. You know, you definitely have that old school, hard nosed pro wrestler. Has anyone given that sort of comparison before to you?
Yeah, I mean, and it's a huge sign of respect, so I appreciate it. I've had stuff like that said to me, and honestly, like I said, I've been wrestling for 18 years, and for a long time, I was just Silas Young. I was a guy who had long hair and a beard, and I was respected. I was a good wrestler. And then, maybe about 7, 8 years back, I had been doing a lot of stuff, and I was still wrestling pretty regularly, and I realized, like, maybe I need to come up with a character a little bit, maybe something that kind of separates me a little bit, because so many guys in wrestling nowadays are just a guy with a first name and a last name, and they're known as being a really good wrestler, right? But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, wrestling's entertainment, right? So like when you watch a movie or you watch TV, like we get connected to characters, people that have very definitive characters, like I don't know, if you think about any favorite TV show or movie you had and your favorite character, like, I don't know, like Seinfeld. You've seen this show Seinfeld before, right? Like Kramer.
Yeah.
Everybody loves Kramer because he's a fucking weirdo with his crazy hair and coming in and always having some wild shit going on, So I was like, I need some kind of character. And I remember at this time, like, it was a time when you were starting to hear terms like metrosexual, right? And like
Yeah.
guys were getting like manicures and pedicures, and guys were wearing like skinny jeans, and like basically like the men of whatever year, let's say 2012, 2013, were not the men of like maybe the 40s and the 50s and the 60s. And I grew up in a family with 5 older brothers. My dad was a pretty hard ass guy. Like he beat up some of my older brother's friends, like when he was drunk, like, and we're talking about my brothers like in their 50s, So,
Yeah.
like he was a pretty hard ass. He was like the fire chief, and like he had this mustache and slick back hair. And I remember like talking with someone, like I forgot how it come up about how like the men of nowadays are not the men of a generation or 2 3 generations ago. And I kind of thought, like, what, I want to do some kind of character thing, like maybe this is my character. I'm the last real man. I'm gonna slick my hair back like my old man had, and I'm gonna shave in a mustache like he had, and I'm gonna be a hard ass. And my dad always was like the guy who like intimidated people, like, and not like in like a bad way, but like it's just a presence,
Yeah.
So I thought, like, maybe this is something I can run with. Sometimes guys in wrestling with their characters, they try and get too crazy and in depth, and it's hard to explain. So if I can't explain to you who my character is through my actions and through a 30-second promo, like, how do I expect fans to get it? Like, you think about wrestling from like the 80s, when you had like the Big Boss Man, like you knew he was like this dirty, hard ass cop. You had Jake the Snake Roberts. He was the guy that came out with the snake. You had the Mounties. He was the, they were the Canadian cops and proud Canadians. You had these very definitive characters. And I knew that since wrestling had turned more towards, I'm a guy with a first name and a last name, and I'm a really good wrestler. And I already had that going for myself. I was like, if I add a character to it, it adds more depth to me, it gives me more opportunities. And I always enjoyed wrestling wrestling more of the heel style, and being able to be more of the director of the match. For people who don't know, like typically in wrestling matches, the heels are the one that kind of control the pace of the match. So, the last real man was something that I was looking for, and it's something that felt like it fit with what was going on in pop culture and our current society. And it was something that was easy to understand, it was something for people to connect with, and it was something that made me different. And to be honest with you, it was in my opinion, I think really it's what helped me get a job with Ring of Honor. Was I had done the Top Prospect tournament in 2013, and shortly before that, I was doing the Last Real Man thing, and I got to cut promos and do this stuff. And I think they really liked the character, and it worked out where I ended up being able to get, kind of a full-time gig there. And I think it was, because I was a good wrestler and people who knew who I was, but then having this character and this extra depth, it gave them ideas for stuff that you can do moving forward.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those characters that I can really see it as a face or a heel. Like,
Hmm.
you know what I mean? Like you can sort of like, go against that sort of cocky snowflake type, heel and be
Right.
that sort of hard-nosed baby face that just beats the shit out of him, but then also being that sort of, cocky, arrogant heel as well. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those characters where it doesn't really need to be changed much to go either way.
Right. It's all about just like putting in the right situation. So like if I'm a heel, and you come out, I can be like, look at you with your little hipster beard and not even looking like you work out at all. You ain't no man. Look at me. This is a man's body, right? So I could say
Yeah.
that like as a heel, or I could come out and be like something like, I look at a guy like you make excuses for yourself. You think that people owe you something. You know what? You're not like all these hardworking people here tonight, all these people who go to work every night, go to work every day, whether they're sick, whether they're not feeling good. It's all about, as a good guy, making the connection with the people and saying, hey, I'm just like you. I realize you work hard and I work hard, and that's why I'm good. And this guy right here, he doesn't work hard. He's a piece of shit who wants to make excuses and blah, blah, blah. But you're right. It's one of those characters that, and I've said this about wrestling in like, especially in the last 10, 15, 20 years, where back in the day, like, how old are you?
I'm 38.
Okay, so and I'm 39. I'll be 40 in September. So you grew up like on the old school wrestling where you had very definitive good guy, bad guy, right? And
Yeah.
like the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've learned that guys can be good guys or bad guys, and it's more about the situation. The situations is what makes someone a good guy or a bad guy. And Kurt Angle was a great example of that. Kurt Angle was a guy who was super well-respected wrestler. He was a freaking beast. He had awesome matches, but putting in the right situations, people would cheer for the other guy. But if put in the right situations, people would cheer for Kurt Angle. So wrestling more nowadays is more situational than this guy's a good guy, this guy's a bad guy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the thing. Like, in a lot of wrestling in that I see, it's very hard to sometimes tell which one's the heel and which one's the face, because you know
Right.
what I mean. Like, you got a baby face doing heel actions, and then you got a heel that's getting the cool ass pot, being that
Right.
cool ass heel, and it's one of those things. As you said, like the last 10, 15 years, you've definitely seen a shift in wrestling, but that's why, like, you see, like with your character in Ring of Honor. And even, not to sort of get off topic, but Nick Aldis over in NWA, that it's very distinctive. It's very like, everything has a purpose in what you guys do.
Right. And I think, me personally, I think that's how wrestling should be. Everything you should be having a purpose and should be part of whatever story you're trying to tell, and I think wrestling has just changed more in the fact too. It's definitely a lot more athletic. It's a lot more athletic. It's a lot more like move oriented and stuff, which can be good, but it can also, take away from things a little bit, just depending on the situation, I guess, basically.
Oh, totally. And I think that's the evolution of wrestling as well. Like, people always say, oh, why can't wrestling be what it was like 20, 30 years ago? Well, because if it was the same thing 20, 30 years ago, how many people are going to be tuned in every single week? Like, you've always got your classics and your legends that if they were here in this day and age, would they still get over in the current climate of pro wrestling?
Right. I think like part of that too is like, I remember like growing up watching a lot of wrestling, right? And I remember like, you remember like the Zeus angle, like when Zeus came in, right?
Yeah.
So like Zeus came in and like, man, I remember like, I think Hogan like hit him with a chair or something and he no-sold. And I remember like as a kid being like, fuck, man, like I don't think Hogan can beat Zeus, right? And then they like had like maybe like Saturday night's main event or some shit. Like they had the steel cage match. And like, I remember as a kid watching that being like, man, Zeus like destroyed Hogan. I went back and watched that like later on as an adult and like being like a trained wrestler for a few years. And I remember like looking at it and going like, how the fuck did I buy this shit? This is horrible, So like nowadays, like there's more entertainment outlets. So like the place you can spend your entertainment dollars have changed. There's way more different outlets where we've been a little bit more exposed and the world's a little bit more open. So wrestling has to be more athletic. It has to seem a little bit more larger than life in the sense that it's because of these great athletic bouts that are happening, opposed to storytelling back then, and you still need the storytelling, but it's just different type of storytelling nowadays. You know, it had to evolve with time.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. It definitely had to evolve with time, and you know, and one of the things that I feel with pro wrestling is, you know, people when they see a botch, they're quick to call it out. But to me, in a real fight, nothing is going to be seamless. Nothing is going to be, you know what I mean? Like those things where it's like, oh shit, I didn't get that hit, or you know. So to me, when I see, you know, I think some wrestlers actually probably botch some. Not, I don't want to say botch, but makes it look more real.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
make it look a little messy, right?
Yeah. Like if it looks too clean, then it looks a bit choreographed. But that's when I see, like, obviously, you know, that little bit of messiness, that little bit of grittiness about it. It really, to me as a fan, goes, okay, this is like, you know, obviously been a wrestling fan for a long time, but it gives a perception of a real fight.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, for anybody who's watched real fights, a lot of real fights are maybe a punch or two throw, and then guys tackling each other and rolling on the ground, or you know, it's never as cool as a choreographed fight. And I think that's kind of something to think about too. Like you watch like old TV shows from like the 80s or something like that, or the 90s, and like the good guy would pull up and like punch a guy in the face, and then he would be out, right? Like he'd knock everybody out with one punch, right? But nowadays in movies, like they have like kick-ass fight scenes where they're doing badass shit, like flipping over tables and like breaking guys' arms with like a guy punches, but the guy picks up a chair and he like gets his arm hooked and he like rips his arm, like, you know, breaks his arm or some shit. Like it's just like that. The way movies and TV have built up the fight scenes, wrestling had to build up the fight. You have to keep changing with society and entertainment, you know?
Oh, 100%. 100%. But you know, in saying that, you know, the talent that you're seeing with a lot of wrestlers these days, you know, like you look at guys like yourself, you know, like you know, Ricochet, Cody Rhodes, Kenny Omega, you know, Jay Lethal, you know, these guys are absolutely phenomenal what they do, and everything seems so seamless with what you do and what these guys do. But one of the things I wanted to ask you with your character, you know, you're obviously a cigarette smoker in your day-to-day life. How were you able to incorporate that on a national, like on television with Ring of Honor? Because to me, like I said, and maybe that's where I got the whole Harley race thing and stuff like that, the similarities, but that very hard-nosed, you know, the cigarette smoker, like, how was that a hard thing for you to get across the line to incorporate into your character for television?
So honestly, I thought it was something I would never be able to like incorporate. Like I knew if I did like little videos on my own that I could do it. But we also know like nowadays, like in general, like we have like these no smoking like campaigns and commercials and shit you see online or whatever, right? So I thought it was something I'd never be able to incorporate, but you know, luckily it was something I've been able to sneak in a little bit here and there. It's not something I push a whole lot, but I mean, even the guys I work with, they'll be like, man, how do you smoke cigarettes and still go out there and wrestle the way you do? And I'm like, well, it's because I go to the gym and run like 5 miles a day on the treadmill, you know, but I get what you're saying. Like how, I mean, honestly, bro, I don't know how I've been able to sneak that in, but I definitely had, like, I know I did the thing like last year when I wrestled the squid, like when I was doing stuff with John Gresham, you know, like the pure wrestling thing. And I'd like put the dude in like the abdominal stretch and pull out the cigarette and lit it up. You know, it was just something that I think it fit with the character and stuff. And I was allowed to do it, you know, but I don't know how long I can get away with it, to be honest with you.
Mate, I'm an ex-smoker, so like, you know, I still, whenever I see like someone incorporating that, I'm like, oh, good for you, good work.
Mm-hmm.
But I tell you what,
it's like something of days gone, you know. You don't see that.
Yeah, like it's a real throwback, you know, and that's the way that it sort of feels. But you know, you mentioned your work with Jonathan Gresham, and man, those matches that you guys had together, like, absolutely tore the house down. How was it for you working with Gresham though? Because it's like your styles are so different, but it just seemed to work so well.
Right. I mean, so I like weirdly, like me and John, like we didn't really come up in the same area. Like he was from like the Georgia area, and I know you're not from the States, but like he was from the Georgia area, which was like the South. But then he had lived up in like like somewhere around the Illinois area, which Illinois is one state south of Wisconsin. And I'd always known about him. I always knew he was really good. Never heard anything but good stuff about him. But weirdly, we never crossed paths on the independent scene. So I didn't really meet John until he got to Ring of Honor, and me and him would talk and stuff like that, because you're in the locker room. And it was weird. Like, we both really respected each other a lot. And, he's such a different wrestler than what I am. But for a long time, before the whole Last Real Man thing, I was did a lot of technical wrestling, stuff like that. And I kind of realized hey, I've been with Ring of Honor for a few years now. I've been doing this whole Last Real Man thing. I want to add a little bit, a different layer to myself and kind of show these people hey, I'm the Last Real Man and I kick ass and whatever, but also I can actually kind of wrestle here too, guys. So let's show that a little bit, So I think it was something where we both really had a good amount of respect for each other. So it was a lot of fun putting matches together and working with each other on stuff like that. So I really enjoyed working with John a lot, actually.
Yeah, he's such an amazing, talented guy. And as I said, those matches that you had, just everything just seemed to mesh and flow so well together. And even the backstage sort of pull aparts that you guys did and the vignettes for it were just so entertaining. And it's and to his credit, he's one of the probably the top prospects in the business, and definitely a main eventer to come. But also, I wanted to ask you, so you've held the Ring of Honor Television Championship twice, and one of the things in pro wrestling is to be a champion, is to obviously the company putting faith in you to invest in you as one of the top talents in that organization. Mm-hmm. For you, after everything that you've come through, all your hardships and to where you've gotten to until that moment, how big of a deal was it for you winning the television championship?
I mean, it was a huge deal. I love wrestling and I love what I do. I feel super fortunate to be where I'm at and to just be able to do this. I can say when I first started wrestling, I just remember thinking man, if I could just be booked every weekend, I'd be happy. And then I thought, well, if I could get booked in other states, I would be happy. Maybe if I could start making some real money at this, I'd be happy. Well, maybe if I could get booked for a big company, I'd be happy. And then you start working for Ring of Honor. And then, maybe if I could win a title. So when I won the title, I took that very seriously. Like you said, they're investing in you, and it made me really want to, put a lot into my matches. So it was something I was very, very happy and very proud of to have happen to me. And it was something that I took as a responsibility, and I felt like I had a lot of really, really good title defenses during that time, and especially like you said, to have it twice. It's one thing to win a championship once, but to win it twice. And then I believe it was the second time that I won it. It was with Kenny King. It was a super card down in New Orleans. It was 6,000-7,000 people at this arena. We did a last man standing match. It was awesome. It's been great, man. I mean, it's something that it makes you feel good when you work for a place to know that what you're putting in, they're putting into you as well,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I suppose it's that feeling of validation as well, that everything that you've done this far has come to this moment, and this is the rewards of that moment for you. So, we're in a couple of belt collecting groups where this interview is being streamed, and as we just obviously talked about championships, and you held two different versions of that title.
Yeah, that was the first one.
Yeah,
so I won the old school Ring of Honor Television Championship, and I remember I got it, and then I remember I was contacting them. They said, "Hey, we're gonna have a new belt for you." And of course, me being a wrestler, I was like, "Oh, I hope they don't say anything to me, so I can try and keep this old one too." Well, maybe they'll just forget about that. This one exists. But of course, they're like, "Hey, you need to bring us the old one back, and we'll exchange it out." So that's something that's cool for me. We talked before about you're like, "Hey, man, I've been a big wrestling fan forever." No one gets into wrestling because they think they're going to make a bunch of money at it. If you could make a living at it, cool, right? It's awesome. But in order to get into wrestling, you have to love this shit, man. You have to be a fan. You got to love doing this, because I know for myself, I spent a lot of years traveling a lot of miles, driving in my car, losing money to go do shows multiple hours away just because I love that shit and I wanted to be involved with it and I wanted to make a name and I wanted to get better. So when that happened, I was totally hoping to keep that belt. So, with all that in mind and being a big fan and loving it, for me, it feels awesome to be able to be like, yeah, what, I'm the guy that, yeah, I'm a multi-time Ring of Honor television champion. And there's only been a handful of us, but I'm the one guy that was a champion when we had the original belt. I won.
Yeah, so Silas has just seemed to cut out there, guys. He will be back here very shortly, I'm sure. We haven't had an issue, but you are watching Shooting the Shit Uncensored. I am the host, Piers Austin, and my guest, Silas Young, has been very kind enough to join us. He will be back soon. But, guys, as we're sitting here, I just wanted to, we're waiting for Silas to come back, I should say. Please head over to our Pro Wrestling Tees store and check out some of our shirts. It's prowrestlingtees.com/MWA World. And you can get such shirts like the Shooting the Shit Uncensored shirt, which is the show that you're watching now. Our 2020 wrestling shirt, which is our wrestling game show, which airs every Wednesday night at 10:30 p.m. Australian time and 8:30 a.m. USA Eastern time. We have our MWA black and silver logo shirt, and we also have our anime shirt as well, which has got all the faces of MWA on it. So please head over there, show your support, and check out our t-shirts. Now, Silas, thank you. You just seem to cut out there. So back to what you were saying about the championships. What do you have a personal preference to which one was your favorite, the old school or the new belt that they sort of brought out?
I think just for I think the heritage and all the guys that were before it, I definitely dig that the first belt. It was my first title. It was my first title run, so I think I have I hold that close, but then also being the first guy who had the new belt, they're both pretty special. I appreciate it all. I'm so happy that I'm able to do this as a living, that I'm able to be that one guy that can say, hey, I held that old title and the new title, and I'm the guy that got to do that. So just being in that spot, that's better than either of the belts, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But so we do have we do have a couple of comments coming in here. So Kevin Rodriguez, who runs a show very similar to mine called The War Room on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. He says, it's really cool being the only man to hold both the old and new school belt. And I have to agree, that's something in history which will at least sort of be something that you can sort of take with you and say, hey, I was able to be the guy that had, the two different versions of the belt in that one reign.
Yeah, no one else is going to be able to do that. No matter what anybody else does, no one else is going to be able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, we're all, anybody that gets involved in wrestling, the wrestling fans first, so to be able to have that to hold my hat on or whatever, it's a pretty cool experience, man.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to ask you, and sort of leading in, you were actually under contract with WWE, and you were down in OVW. You had a couple of matches, like trial matches, I think, in early 2007, and you were there for a few years. What was your experience like, working that system and working in the developmental territory of OVW?
Okay, so it's weird that you asked that, or not weird that you asked that, but I'm glad that you asked that because it was a very weird experience. So I had done some extra work where you get booked to do Raw or SmackDown or whatever. And I had worked a match with Val Venus in Milwaukee, which is where I live. And, Val Venus was at a point in his career where he was he was trying to help guys get jobs and put people over. So we had a Sunday Night Heat match, and he really made the match be about me. And for anybody who watches wrestling a lot knows that usually those matches, if it's a local guy against a guy who's a name on TV, usually the guy that's a name on TV just beats the shit out of you and beats you in 2 minutes, but he really made me look really good in that match. And, I stepped up and, did my job, and then I got invited to do some more stuff. And I knew that, they had talked to me and had me do some promos afterwards and stuff were looking at me. And Ken Anderson, or Mr. Kennedy, was there at the time, and he got trained by the same guy that I got trained by, and he'd put in a good word for me. So they said, hey, we're going to invite you down to OVW for a week. So I went down to OVW for a week. I trained. I did the house shows all that week with them. And then shortly before Christmas of, I think it would have been 2007, I got offered a job. Of course, super excited, man, pumped, fucking ecstatic, you know. And we go through the process, because when you get hired by WWE, it isn't just like, hey, we're gonna give you a job, now you work here, you know, like you have to like they send you like a you know, like a pass or like a packet of paper like that thick. You got to do like background checks, you know, like cardiovascular tests, drug tests, like all this shit, you know, stuff that takes some time, you know.
Yeah.
So during the process of, and granted, this happened right before Christmas, so like they offered it, but shit didn't get sent until after the new year. So I'm in the middle of doing all my stuff. I do all my testing, drug testing, cardiovascular testing. Everything comes back great. It's good. I'm like about ready to finish up, you know, all my stuff. And like I had to get like a passport, and it takes a little bit of time to get a passport, whatever. I get all my stuff in. And one day I see on the internet that WWE ceased to have a developmental program with OVW. And I went, oh, fuck, like I'm supposed to report to OVW. So I see that the next day I get a call, and they're like, hey, like, you know, it's nothing you did, but like, we're not going to put your contract through. Like, we're going to have to pull back on it. So I never really was in the developmental system. Like, I got the opportunity to do like a bunch of dark matches and go down there and train there for a week and do the house shows and had good matches and stuff like that. But man, it was a pretty rough spot in my career, because I was like, right there, like they wanted me, and they offered me the job, and then they canceled the developmental deal there, which threw my developmental deal out the window. I remember thinking like, well, like, hey man, like I'll move to Florida, I'll move to wherever you are, and they're like, we're just not putting any new contracts through. So I never actually got to actually work in the developmental system.
Oh man, that would have been heartbreaking, being so close. Yeah.
It was a kick in the nuts, man. I mean, to put it lightly, it was a kick in the nuts, you know. But I was also realistic enough to go like, hey, like, you know, I think I was, you know, 20, I guess it was 2007, about 27 at the time. I was like, you know what, you've been wrestling for about 5-6 years at this point. Like, yes, this is like your lifetime dream or whatever, but you also love wrestling, you know. For me, I always wanted to be able to make a living at wrestling, and it didn't even necessarily have to be making an extravagant living or anything like that. Like, I just wanted to be able to pay my bills, even if it meant living in a little shitty apartment somewhere and just being able to feed myself and go out wrestle. Like, for me, life is about being able to do the things that you want to do, you know, like, you know, a lot of people, they have to work jobs they don't enjoy, you know, and I'm not shitting on them or anything like that. Like, we all got to do what we got to do as adults. But for myself, I just always wanted to be able to make a living at wrestling. So I was like, yeah, like this didn't work out. And granted, this is the dream and this is the end game or whatever. But I was like, man, you're still able to get booked places. You're still able to wrestle. You're still able to get paid. You're still able to live your dream and do this. So, you know, it was a kick in the balls, but it wasn't something that ever was like, well, fuck this, I'm not going to do it anymore. You know, it was something that I just said, well, it's just a bump in the road. You got to keep plugging on, you know?
Yeah, and you know, if anything that has been more evident over the last, you know, let's say 5 to 10 years, is guys can make a really good living outside of WWE, whereas, you know, maybe 15 years prior, or the end of WCW and ECW, it probably looked a little bit scary for a lot of guys. But in this day and age, you know, guys are making money, guys are building brands and reputations outside of WWE.
Right. You know,
and I'm sure WWE doesn't like that, but the wrestling business is thriving on it.
Right. You know, it's funny you say that too, because my first training session was like April 7th or something like that of 2001. Right. So me not really knowing anything about wrestling at the time, I decided to become a pro wrestler like 2 months after 2/3 of the wrestling business closed in the United States, you know, like,
Yeah.
and me just being a dumbass at the time, not really knowing shit about the business. It was like, oh yeah, this is a great time to get into wrestling. You know, like, it's hard enough to make money and make a living in pro wrestling, but now 2/3 of the of the places to make wrestling have just closed down and went out of shop. So it's funny that you say that, you know, but it's I think wrestling is one of those things where you got to do it because you love it. Like, you can't, like, I think even WWE showed this, like, forever in the early 2000s, they tried fucking hiring people who were like former like college football players or whatever. I'm like, well, you're an athlete and we can train you to be a wrestler, but wrestling's something you got to be passionate about, man. Like you got to love it. You got to be passionate about it. You got to get it. You got to like get how wrestling works and get that it's a give and take. And it's not just something you can do. Like it's hard, man. You're out, you're traveling. You have the mental stress of like putting matches together, making sure your shit's on point, making sure the fans are enjoying it, what you're doing, you're enjoying, and the people you work with are good. So, I laugh about it now about how naive I was at the time to not even consider like, oh, you're deciding to like invest your future in something that like the majority of the business just completely went away, which is crazy nowadays because there's so many places to make money. You can make a living working for WWE or Ring of Honor or TNA or even on the independents or go to Japan, go to Europe, go to Australia. It's definitely a more global world now where you can, there's more places to work, which is insane, insanely good.
Absolutely. And we have a question from Kevin Rodriguez. He wants to know, how do you feel about the NWA and Ring of Honor cross promotions, and who would you like to work? Obviously, I believe he probably means who would you like to work on the NWA roster if you had the opportunity?
Right. I always think it's good when places are willing to work together. It's just it's beneficial for the boys. And it's beneficial for the fans. I think like for myself, like having worked the independents for so long, you go to certain shows and some independent shows are better than others. And, at independent shows, you look maybe and go like, oh man, I got to work with this guy. Ugh, but like working for promotions like the NWA or Ring of Honor, I just like working with guys I haven't ever worked before with, it's wrestling's weird where like, you can have heard of guys and you never work together, but then you work together and you have this like really tight connection. So, I would love to work with honestly anybody that they're using, because any of the top companies are using top talent, and it's always cool because all of us that are involved, we all love what we're doing. So really anybody, like I've never worked with Nick Aldis before. Like I think it would be great to work with him,
Oh, I think that would be a great match. I think that'd be absolutely amazing. But, look, any of the questions I have, they're not in any sort of order, but a few months ago, I had the opportunity to sit down with, both of the bouncers, and you actually tagged with the Beer City Bruiser for a while, both of you guys being Wisconsin boys, and you guys went on to win Tag Wars as well. What's your relationship like with Bruiser? Is he someone that you've known for a long period of time? Did you know him prior to wrestling? And how did you find tagging with him?
Right. So, I didn't know him prior to wrestling, but I mean, I'd basically known him since I got into wrestling, like definitely within the first year or two. Like you said, we're both from the same area. We did a lot of independent shows over the years. Matt's a good dude. Like I said, we've known each other. We've worked together countless times. Like I can't even remember how many times we worked together. And we always enjoyed it. And he's a guy like me who had to work a long time to be able to get an opportunity. And I know he's a guy who like really appreciates where he's at now. So me and him, we're always cool. We're always good. And we always enjoyed working together. So it was cool to be able to win Tag Wars. It was cool being able to tag with him, but it was also that little extra of like, hey man, like not only like we both doing this, but like we both know where we came from. We both know that like we did a lot of these small little independent shows where guys, where we weren't getting paid, or there maybe wasn't a lot of fans, or just like, but we both could appreciate because we both knew each other's careers, and then we both went out there and ground to get what we want. And I think for myself, like the great thing about wrestling is you can be totally different people in real life, but we all have this like one connection that is wrestling, and we all love it so much. And that's like, it always makes us all super tight,
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's the thing, is being able to stay humble and be able to stay, true to yourself about, the roots of where you've come from. And that's something, obviously when I had the chance to speak to Bruiser, he seemed very much similar to you, of appreciation of where he's come from and where he is right now in the business. And, it's evident when you hear you guys speak about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
But look, we are getting to that 1 hour mark. We're coming up to it. So it is that time. Silas has been warned about this. This is time for the Guess the Aussie slang game. Silas, have you ever in your life been to Australia?
No, but I would love to. So for anybody who's listening out there, I would love to come to Australia. Love to. And I know you guys have some crazy ass slang shit, so I'm actually excited for this part of the show. So
that's it. And you know what? This is going to set you up for when you do come to Australia, so you understand what the fuck that we say. Because being from Australia, I've got a lot of friends from the US and around the world, and some of the stuff that I say, which is just to me is like everyday stuff, they're like, "What the fuck are you saying?" You know, so we'll have a bit of fun with this. All right. So
all right.
the first one. Oh, mate, I just want to pump up some akadaka. Akadaka.
Can you spell that for me?
ACCADACA. Akadaka.
I just want to pump up some akadaka. I have no fucking idea, man. I don't even know what the fuck to think. I want to pump up some akadaka. Oh, ACDC? You guys call what? It's ACD. Why not ACDC? Akadaka is longer than ACDC.
It is, but that's like the nickname for it. So AC/DC. So the band was actually created because one of the guy's younger sisters, they had a Black and Decker vacuum, but she used to call it a akadaka. So that's where they got their name.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's crazy as shit, man.
Hey, Silas, you want to come over to my place and drink some piss?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you're saying? You asking me? Or you're saying, do I know what that means?
Do you know what that means? Drink some piss.
Drink some piss.
Yeah.
What is that, like? Drink shitty beers?
No, it just means to drink alcohol. So hey, come over. Let's get on the piss.
Okay, let's get pissed up. Let's get drunk, right?
Yeah.
I like. Okay. You know what? I like that one. I think I'm gonna start using that.
Yeah, mate, go for it.
You want to come over and drink some piss? I like that.
You should, definitely. All right. Hey, Silas, can you swing past the servo? Grab me a pack of durries. What's
I think that's like you saying, can you stop by like a gas station, give me a pack of cigarettes?
That's 2 points. You got it.
All right. Well, I'm a smoker, so I should know that one, right?
100%. 100%.
What are durries?
Durries? Cigarettes.
Is it like a certain brand or what?
No.
That's just what you guys call cigarettes, is durries.
Yeah, got a durry.
Okay.
So, hey, Silas, can you swing past the bottle and pick up a slab?
One more time.
Can you swing past the bottle and pick up a slab?
Is that like saying picking up a case of beer?
Yep. So that's a slab. What's a bottle?
That's like a liquor store.
That is correct. I am very crazy Facebook
okay
user.
But I didn't know that. I heard bottle and I heard slab, so I was like, yeah, bottle must be liquor, and a slab. I like look at a case of beer, it's kind of like a slab, right? Is that the idea?
That's it. That's it. Oh, mate, Dad's outside and he's by the pool and he's in his fucking budgie smuggler. What's a budgie smuggler?
That's saying he's wearing some little tight ass underwear. Some we may call them banana hammocks here, right?
Yeah. So like a speedo,
like the speedo. Yeah. What did you call it though? What smuggler?
A budgie smuggler, because it, when they're wet, it looks like you're trying to it explains itself, doesn't it, Silas?
It does. I mean, it's like the international language, I guess.
Yeah. All right. I've got another one for you. Oh, mate. I'm fucking cactus.
Oh, man, I'm fucking cactus. Does that mean like you're like
cactus, yeah.
Cactus. Does that mean you're like hungover?
Yeah, kind of like dead or broken, like, oh, that thing's fucking cactus.
Yeah, like you're dry, you're beat up, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying too hard here, man. That's what
you're doing well, man. You're doing well. hey, Silas, check out that Sheila.
That's like a hot girl, right?
Yeah, Sheila's like any woman, but yeah, like don't call a woman a Sheila to her face.
Why do you guys call it a Sheila, or why do you guys call a woman a Sheila though? What's the reference behind that?
I don't know. It's more of an older generation thing, like probably big in like the 80s and 70s around that sort of time. Like,
Was there like some iconic hot woman named Sheila at the time? You think maybe?
I don't know, man. I have to ask my dad on that one. So
Okay, all right.
but all right. So we got it. We got a couple more. Hey, this is my mate. He's a banana bender. Banana bender.
I don't know. I'm not real sure. Is that like some reference to like I don't know, banana bender? Maybe something with maybe being gay. I don't know. I'm not sure.
No, not at all. A banana bender is someone from Queensland, Australia. So we call them
Why?
banana. Well, we call them banana benders because that's where mainly bananas are grown, and there's a lot of banana farms and stuff like that over there. So we call them banana benders, and
Okay.
bananas are bent. So
Right.
yeah, that's where we're at with it. But
All right. Well, I mean, I hear like, a lot of times, like, at least in the States, like people refer to like anything that can be a phallic object as being like a dick or whatever, right? So
yeah,
I was like, oh, I don't know if this is like some like shitty thing to say about like gay people or something like that. So I don't know.
no.
And I'm sure I probably offended somebody. I didn't mean to, but
No. Like Australia, we're very much an ally nation here. So yeah, we definitely don't throw out any homophobic slurs. But
well, that's good. That's good.
yeah.
I mean,
So,
and I'm in the States where people are, especially where there's a lot of that. There's a lot of very judgmental people where I guess every fucking where nowadays. So
yeah, man. All right, so I've got a couple more for you. Cut sick, mate. My wife is fucking out there, and she's cutting sick right now.
cut sick.
Cutting sick, yeah. Like she's like my missus is just fucking cutting sick.
Does that mean she's like skipping out of work saying she's sick?
No, cutting sick. Like she's just telling me off, going, "You fucking asshole! You fucking get in there!" Like cutting, cutting sick, breaking balls, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
All right, so we'll do a couple more. Oh, mate, when I saw that Sheila, I cracked a fat.
Does it mean like you got a boner or something like that?
It is, man. It is. I'll go. All right, I'll go two more for you. Hey, Silas, you want a bicky?
A Mickey or a Bicky?
Yeah, a bicky. Icky.
Bicky. Is that like a beer?
It's a biscuit. So, if you're having a cup of coffee, you might have a chocolate biscuit, like a cookie.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, we call them bickies here. All right, so I'll go another one. That bloke over there is a fucking drongo.
Well, I know you're calling someone a bloke, so you're just saying he's a fuck or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, what was that second word? A bolingo or a boling?
Drongo.
What's a drungo? I don't know that one. A drunk?
No, just like a dopey fuck. Like just someone who's just
like a dipshit or an asshole, right?
Yeah, man. Just someone who's a bit of a dipshit. But Silas, you've played the Aussie slang game. Thank you very much for being a guest on Shooting the Shit Uncensored with me, Piers Austin. Silas, tell everyone where they can support you, where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I appreciate everybody tuning in here tonight. I had a good time with this. I hope I didn't offend anybody with anything that I said. I've been having a few drinks. And give a fuck what people do with their lives. I'm happy to be able to be a part of this show, to be able to learn a little bit about your culture, whatever. I hope I can come over there and meet you in person, come over to Australia and wrestle. But you can find me on Twitter at Last Real Man ROH, as well as Instagram at Last Real Man ROH, or I think Instagram maybe doesn't do the at, but Last Real Man ROH. And if you know how to use Google, you can probably find out my real name, and you can also find me on Facebook on that, as well as you can find merchandise on Pro Wrestling Tees, as well as Ring of Honor Wrestling or ROHWrestling.com. So, yeah, I mean, I just appreciate everybody tuning in. You want to buy a t-shirt or something, that's cool. Just want to hit me up and say what's up or shoot the shit. I'm cool with that. I love what I do. I'm realistic that we really learned by watching a lot of this empty arena wrestling how important fans are to pro wrestling, how much fans bring to the show. So hit me up, guys. I'm happy to be able to do stuff like this. I'm happy to be able to be wrestling, and I'm always happy to talk to fans. So hit me up.
Silas, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Silas, thank you for joining. And definitely when you come to Australia, I'm going to take you out and we'll get on the piss together, my friend. Guys, thanks for watching. Make sure that you keep tuned. Click subscribe somewhere along the top here on our YouTube channel. We appreciate it. Silas, we'll catch you next time, brother. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, man. Thank you again.
My pleasure.